The Xbox 360 used to be known as a highly secure console, exploitable only by those who enjoy the smell of solder fumes. But over the last year, that has changed dramatically, since we can now simply plug a USB into the Xbox, turn it on, and it will automatically boot into a fully custom dashboard. And in this video, we're gonna walk through step by step how to accomplish exactly that beautiful 360 setup. So let's dive right into it. Real quick, if you're new here, hey, I'm Coulter. On this channel, we cover PC builds, weird tech, and of course, console modding. So if that sounds like you, be sure to subscribe down below to catch future videos. So if you've been a fan of console mods and exploits for a while like I have, you've probably heard of BadUpdate, which is a hypervisor exploit developed by Grimdoomer last year, which was activated by a combination of USB files and that little known Rock Band Blitz demo arcade game. However, at the end of last year, Grimdoomer set that repo to read only, signaling that they did what they wanted to do, and they're not going to develop BadUpdate any further. But that is not where the story of BadUpdate ends, my friends, because another console exploiter by the name of Shutterbug 2000 took it upon themselves to make the BadUpdate exploit even easier to activate by modifying the exploit so that instead of having to run on the Rock Band Blitz screen, it's able to run on the Avatar selection screen, which, if you haven't used a 360 before, that's the first screen you see when you turn on a 360, meaning that with that modification to the BadUpdate exploit, the 360 can now basically auto-exploit itself when you boot it up and really blurs the lines between a software exploited 360 and an RGH hard-modded 360, which is huge news for those of us who aren't so good at soldering and like easy ways to modding consoles. And with this change, we get a new name for BadUpdate, now called ABadAvatar. Or how I'll be calling it, to make it easier to flow with my sentences, BadAvatar. But now, enough backstory, let's dive into how you can actually get BadAvatar going on your 360, as well as some bonus setup tips to help you get up in gaming fast. I'm not gonna assume you had a BadUpdate USB setup before. This way, this guide will be the most useful for those who either forgot how their BadUpdate USB was set up like me, or if you're exploiting your 360 for the first time. If so, congrats and welcome to the club. Maybe you subscribe down below if you're into console modding stuff like this. Apparently, a lot of you don't subscribe, and it would really help out the channel if you did. So first off, if you have anything on your USB drive that you'll want to keep, whether it's save files, homebrew, ROMs, or whatever, be sure to back them up now because we'll be formatting the USB drive in a second. Second, you want to make sure that your 360 is on the latest official Xbox update, which is 17.559. If it's not on that version, you might be able to update via the official servers if it's still up, but if not, we'll cover how to manually update your system offline later in the video. While we're poking around our 360, you'll also want to press the Xbox button and go to Settings, Profile, Sign-In Preferences to make sure that Auto Sign-In is disabled, as BadAvatar relies on us hanging around on that sign-in screen for a minute, as you'll see soon. The last thing we'll do while the 360 is powered on is, to be extra safe, you can disconnect and forget any Wi-Fi networks. That way the Xbox doesn't automatically phone home before the exploit is completely run. But once the exploit is finished, then Xeonshackle does us a solid and blocks traffic to Microsoft so that you don't have to worry about any of that going on. But until that point in the process, good to be safe and just unplug any Ethernet or disconnect from any Wi-Fi. Next, we'll be grabbing our files. So we're gonna grab the zip file of ABadAvatar, of course, from its release page. We'll also grab the latest version of the Aurora dashboard, or whatever your favorite 360 custom dashboard is. And finally, we'll be using the BadBuilder tool to dramatically simplify this USB setup process. And before we talk more about that, just shout out to all the developers for all the tools that you've worked on for this whole thing. Like, we couldn't enjoy the 360 in its soft modded nature without you, or soft exploited rather, but just thank you so much for all your hard work on this. But the reason we're using BadBuilder is if you've set up a BadUpdate USB before, like I did on the previous two videos I did covering BadUpdate, you'll know that there are a fair number of zip files and file management involved to get the USB properly configured, and it's kind of a headache and easy to miss a step, but thankfully, a kind open source dev decided to create a guided command line tool that formats the USB drive for us, downloads all the files we need, and it even makes it easy to slip in the Aurora dashboard. Now, if you prefer the more manual method, you can definitely feel free to check out my first video I did covering BadUpdate, where I went through step by step on how to set up your USB with all the files and such, like I mentioned. But today we're going to try to make our lives easier. Note that for BadBuilder, if you don't yet have a .NET Runtime version 8 or higher on your computer, you'll want to download and install that at this point as well. And if you're in that group from earlier that didn't have your Xbox up to version 17.559, I did not forget about you. Here's the quick and dirty on how to get it up to date offline without needing Microsoft servers. Essentially, you'll just grab the 17.559 update from a site like DigiX or archive.org. Then you'll extract that update to the root of your USB, which should result in there being a folder on the root of your USB called $system update. Then you just pop your USB drive in your Xbox, boot it up, accept the update prompt, which should appear, let it restart, and then shut down your Xbox, grab your USB, and come back here because you're all good to go. Now for actually prepping our BadAvatar USB. So first we'll want to extract the zip file for BadBuilder, then run its exe file as administrator, very important step. Windows will probably complain about this, but we'll just bypass that warning because we trust the devs, but disclaimer, etc., disclaimer. We'll choose build exploit USB, and then select your USB drive from the list. Just make sure you're not choosing an internal drive or something. Make sure it says removable, and almost certainly not one that says fix. Then type Y, and then press enter for it to format the USB drive for you. In my case though, it seemed to struggle formatting my 512 gigabyte USB drive, and it actually crashed out while doing so. But the easy fix was I just fired up Rufus, put it in non-boot mode, formatted my drive to FAT32, and then came back to BadBuilder. And then I still had to say, yes, please format my drive, but it recognized that it was already formatted and then just proceeded on to the next step. So if you hit that issue, then hopefully that works for you. The next screen will ask what files you already have, but to keep things easy, we'll just say, I don't have any files. Simply press enter and it will download all of those files for you, which if you did this manually before, you know this just saved you a ton of time. It'll then ask if we prefer FreeMyZ or Z-Unshackle, and we'll choose Z-Unshackle. Both let us run kex files without having to manually patch files and all that stuff, but Z-Unshackle is just more fully featured, so we'll go with that one. BadBuilder will then copy those files and folders over to the USB for us, tacking all the folder structure stuff on our behalf, which is super nice. And lastly, it'll ask us if we want to add a homebrew program, which we'll of course accept. Then we'll extract our Aurora zip folder and rename the extracted folder to just Aurora instead of the super long version name and all that, because that will help us along in a second. And then we'll copy the file path to that Aurora folder. Now back in BadBuilder, we'll choose add a new homebrew app, paste that file path, and it'll automatically find the aurora.kex and add it, which is awesome. And finally, we'll choose finish and save, press Y, and press enter for it to do the final copy of all the files to the USB. It'll then tell us our USB is good to go, and then we'll press any key to exit the tool. Now here's one of those hot tips I mentioned. If we want Aurora to boot right after BadAvatar runs, which we probably do, and open up the launch.ini in a notepad or text editor of your choice. Then you'll scroll down to where it says default equals blank, and you'll type capitalized USB apps Aurora aurora.kex, or whatever your specific file path is, but this is probably your file path if you just followed all those steps I just went through. Go ahead and save that file and close it. And now you may have noticed that in BadBuilder, at least at the time of this recording, it's meant to build a BadUpdate USB and not a BadAvatar USB, which it'd be awesome if in the future the dev updates it to let you choose between making a BadUpdate USB and a BadAvatar USB, but until then, we just need to do a little extra work to convert this USB now to a BadAvatar USB. So first we'll go into the BadUpdate payload folder on the USB and delete all the files except for bad storage and default.kex. After that, we'll extract the BadAvatar zip, open the BadUpdate payload folder, and copy paste all those files into the BadUpdate payload folder on the USB. And the final step is just to go into the content, all zeros folder on your USB, and delete this folder, which is just the Rock Band Blitz game that we no longer need to run BadAvatar. Before we eject the USB, this is a good time to copy over any homebrew apps you might want, like maybe the SNES 360, which in my case I just placed in the apps folder, and of course any game files, like my personal favorite on exploited 360s, the unreleased remaster of GoldenEye 007, codenamed Bean for our man Sean Bean. Note that your 360 game backup files will need to be converted out of ISO format for a few reasons to be playable, and to do that you can use a tool like ISO to GOD, and for OG Xbox games you can use a tool like Extract ISO GUI. OG Xbox games do require a few extra steps to get up and running, so if you want a dedicated video about loading up 360 and OG Xbox backups on your newly exploited 360, just let me know in the comments and maybe we'll get up to that. Now with all those steps out of the way, which surprisingly is the shortest version of the USB prep process for this exploit to date, we can finally eject our USB, toss it into our powered off 360, and fire it up to get the party started. And now this is where all your hard work pays off, because as you'll see, the new BadAvatar version of BadUpdate makes this exploit feel almost identical to a hard mod because it runs completely automatically. You'll fire up your 360, see a little achievement notice at the bottom of the screen right away, and you'll also notice your console lights start to do a little bit of a dance while the exploit attempts to hit, just like it did with the Rock Band Blitz process. And it's important to note that at this stage, you just watch those lights dance and don't try to back out of the avatar screen or whatever, because BadAvatar needs to be running on this screen, so don't take this screen away from BadAvatar. It's trying to do you a solid. For me, this process took about 2 minutes, which I believe is the longer extreme of this process. And the second time I ran it, it went in like 10, 15, 20 seconds, so your mileage may vary, but once the exploit hits, you'll see your console lights do this little victory dance, and you'll also see the Z-Unshackle success animation pop up on screen, followed by this screen that shows your console keys, and then you press the back button on your controller, which if all is configured correctly, should boot you directly into Aurora, which is just so freaking clean for a software-only exploit on the previously much more difficult to mod 360. And with that, congratulations, you've successfully run BadAvatar on your 360, and free play is unlocked. But let's quickly cover how to push push this newly exploited console to do some pretty cool things for us, especially since your Aurora menu is probably looking like a useless blank void right now. The first thing we should do is hop into the Aurora settings. Now, since we didn't end up choosing our own profile on the sign-in screen, you can actually go to the Profile tab and choose for it to auto-sign into a profile of your choice in case you want that for certain games. Now head over to the Content tab, and this is where we can tell Aurora to look for our games, apps, and homebrew. All we have to do is choose Add under Manage Paths, select Change, scroll down to USB 0, and then when you've hovered over your folder you want to add, such as apps or your 360 games folder, press Y to select that folder, and then press Save, which will trigger an auto scan. And you'll do this for as many folders as you want, and then when you pop back out to Aurora, you'll see your apps and games there. As far as getting the pretty artwork, like I mentioned earlier, Z and Shackle includes LiveBlock and LiveStrong, which blocks the Xbox from talking to Microsoft servers, which means that you should now be safe to connect to the internet again, via Wi-Fi or Ethernet. And once you do that, you can go back into the Aurora settings and choose the Assets tab, where you can simply press the download button for it to do a pretty good job of downloading the artwork for most of your titles. Like, it even found the artwork for the unreleased 007 remaster title, and it found artwork for my SNES 360 emulator, so that's super nice. Good job, Aurora devs. However, it probably won't find artwork for everything in your library, such as the case for my Z-Boy Advance emulator here, but you can also try out a tool like Aurora's Asset Editor, which apparently lets you easily copy over custom artwork from your PC directly onto the Xbox, so give that a whirl if you want to really hone your aesthetic of your Aurora dashboard here. And before we fire up some games, you'll probably like to know that Aurora actually has a hidden, or at least hidden to me, homebrew browser downloader built right into it. And to access it, all you have to do is press the back button on the Xbox controller to open the system menu, head down to Scripts, choose Aurora Repo Browser, Utility Scripts, and choose Homebrew Store, which will download a homebrew browser script automatically. And then when you choose that new Homebrew Store option from your scripts menu, you'll see you can now easily browse and directly download homebrew and apps hosted on consolemods.org, which is sick. Just note that the download location will likely be your primary hard drive 1, like you can see here with my Z-Boy Advanced download, but you can either use the Aurora file browser to manually move those downloads over to where you want them to go, or you can just change the download path by scrolling down to the bottom of the menu, choose Change Storage Device, and choose USB 0 if you want to keep it all on your flash drive. Jump drive, thumb drive, USB stick, I don't know. I saw some comments about me using old terms, but sorry guys, millennial terms here. But enough chit chat. Let's fire up the SNES 360 and play some F-Zero, just like the Microsoft engineers intended when they built the 360, I'm sure. As you can see here, the 360 seems to have no problem with 8-bit and 16-bit emulation, which is delightful, and it can even fast forward with the right trigger, although, as you can see, that feature is probably more helpful for RPGs than for racing games. If you haven't used Aurora before, you'll probably be pleasantly surprised as you start to explore the various quality of life improvements it slips in throughout the Xbox interface, such as the Xbox home menu now showing temperature readings and an option to open the file browser or just conveniently return to the Aurora dashboard. But finally, of course, we have to enjoy the unreleased masterpiece, GoldenEye 007 Remastered, and of course it runs buttery smooth with its enhanced graphics, sane modern FPS controller scheme, OG graphics toggle, and the minigame I've created of shooting hats off of enemies to make them immortal. My record is about 5 hats, so let me know in the comments if you can beat that. But that is the A to Z steps for getting BadAvatar going on your 360. If you made it this far and found this guide useful, go ahead and drop me a controller emoji in the comments so I know that you want to see more guide content like this. And if you like this video, you'll probably also like where I broke down how to jailbreak the PS4, and that was also quite a fun ride. And lastly, if you want to help out the channel, feel free to subscribe or check out the Patreon or Discord to connect with me in the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.